All right, hey guys, and this is a review if you are going to do a retake for our test over kind of the foundations of the government and the Constitution. And so let's get started. First would be federalism, and we're going to use this infographic that was on Schoology, but we're going to talk about some of the five basic principles of our government, and one is federalism. And this is the idea that federalism is shared between the federal government and state governments. So in class we said that there's a big government, right, and then there's small governments, and they share power, right, kind of back and forth. So our next one is popular sovereignty, and this is, we said power to the people. It means people power, right, popular sovereignty, and that the government is created by the people, and the people give the consent to be governed by through voting, right? And so the next big principle that we'll find over and over in the Constitution and our system of government is checks and balances, and this is where one branch is able to check another. So Congress creates a bill, and the president goes no with his veto, right? And can quickly check that, or the president does something, and the Supreme Court can declare his actions unconstitutional. So lots of checks and balances in our government to make sure that one portion of the government doesn't get too much power over the other two. And the last is individual rights is what this says, but basically we use the words limited government. So essentially the government has to follow the rules of law, and the government can't create any law it wants, right? It has to create laws basically according to the people's will. But this one here says, right, that ensure the rights of individuals are kept, and this is outlined there. Our last one is up here, and that is separation of powers. And so our system of government creates three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial, to kind of have different tasks. And so obviously the legislative is broken up into two, the House and the Senate, and their primary job is to make laws, right? And we elect people to Congress, all 335 of them. And the executive branch is primarily there to enforce the laws. So the president is the most well-known portion of that, but also there's other people like the VP and the cabinets, and there's secretaries and departments that all go to try to enforce or execute. We did this arm cross thing. And the last one is the judicial branch, and their job is to decide or interpret what the laws mean, right? And so we said judge, Judy, right? Justice are three J's. So this is the first article, the second, and then the third. So those are all our principles of government. And above here then is, so you can kind of read through this if you like, but the Constitution comes in three parts. So one in the beginning is the preamble, right? We the people of the United States, in order for a more perfect union. This describes the purposes of the government. So for example, like the common defense, or to ensure domestic tranquility, or the general welfare. And so this gives the reasons why the government exists. We looked at our articles, all 7 of them. And so quickly, we said that Article 1 was the legislative. Article 2 was the executive branch, defining kind of what these are. Article 3 is the judicial branch. Article 4 sets out basically federalism, but defines the relationship between the federal government and the states. We said Article 5 is probably the most important one, because this is the process in which one can amend the Constitution, and that's happened 27 times. We'll talk about the first 10, called the Bill of Rights, here a little bit later. And then Article 6 is basically what's called the supremacy, but it sets up that the federal government is supreme to state and local governments, that if federal law trumps state and local law, that if there's some sort of conflict, that's how that goes down. And the 7th and last article is the process of ratifying the Constitution. So we needed 9 of the 13 original states to say yes to the Constitution, which they eventually did. And here are our first 10. The Bill of Rights gets added a little bit later. We'll talk more about this, but some things that you're probably familiar with. And you don't need to know specifics on this, but just that the Bill of Rights was added to protect people's rights and the rights of states. And I think that's all I wanted to show you on this one, yeah. And so moving on, there was an argument though over our Constitution, and there were people who did not like the Constitution, people who did. The people who did were called Federalists, right? The name is kind of helpful because it's a pretty big hint on who likes the federal government. Federalists and anti-Federalists obviously oppose it. So you don't necessarily need to know tons of names of supporters, but just know some pretty important people, presidents or people who will become eventually presidents. Hamilton and Madison and Jefferson are all supporters or opponents of this system of government. But Federalists generally can be summed up in a couple things. One, they were usually wealthy and or business owners, and usually well educated. They saw themselves as sort of an elite, and they thought that their class or their group of people was the most fit to govern, that they had the education, the experience, and sometimes some people would even say the morality to govern wisely, right? That and they wanted a powerful central government. They were arguing for a system close to what's shown in the Constitution. They wanted a two-house legislature, and so they wanted the Senate to kind of be removed from the people. So for a long time, this is getting into details, but for a long time, the Senate was senators were appointed by the legislative of each legislative house of each state. But eventually, people are able to decide who their senators will be. But generally, they distrusted the people. They feared the tyranny of the people. They thought the people might become a mob and take over. Anti-Federalists were that mob, right, to some extent, and they were usually made up of farmers and small shopkeepers and laborers, so sort of common people. And they believed that the common man had kind of a decency, and they really wanted a participatory democracy. So they were a big fan of direct democracy, if you remember that term. And they viewed elites, though, as corrupt, and they wanted to protect their rights. So where Federalists were maybe more interested in the common good, that everyone could benefit, they wanted to make sure that their rights are guaranteed. And so they wanted stronger state governments, sort of like the system that was in place for the Articles of Confederation. And they wanted frequent elections, so not this kind of removed power, but they wanted to directly say who is going to represent them. So in the end, the Federalists do win. We get a very strong central government, and a lot of what the Federalists were pushing for. However, the Anti-Federalists get in the Bill of Rights, right? And so they get in the freedom of speech and petition and the right to bear arms. And so this is kind of added to guarantee that the government won't search and seize your stuff, or that you have due process, or you have a jury trial, or that the government can't use cruel and unusual punishment, and that there is power to the people and power to the states. And so hopefully that's a decent refresher of our unit of government. A quick reminder, there is a study guide which can give you some more details, and some review games which might also assist you. So let me know if you have any specific questions. Hope you have a good one.